In this video, we are going to learn how to navigate the Zbrush workspace. At first, there are a lot of elements here because Zbrush has updated a lot over the years, and some of these elements are from the earlier days of Zbrush. But we're not going to be using all of them. We'll just take a look at the elements that will be useful for sculpting. When you first open the software, this is what you might see. Depending on the version you're on, it might look slightly different, but it will be similar. So what you see here is the Zbrush tools, basically all the 3D models that are available in the software. And if you scroll through these files, you'll see brushes, you'll see textures. These are all the elements that are just installed by default in Zbrush. So you can close this out by going to the right to Lightbox Tools, and that's going to, I had to click it twice because I was on a different section, but if you just click that, you will exit this set of folders. And if you do want to use some of these elements later on, you can just access it again by clicking on Lightbox Tools. Once you close that out, this is the window that opens up. And you'll notice on the right that you have some functionality to create models. And on the left, you have other elements that we'll talk about once we have a model in the scene. So to create a model in Zbrush, to start with something in your workspace, you can either open a project from the Lightbox tool. So sometimes what I like to do is I open this polysphere and I start from there. But if you want to start from scratch with another shape that exists here, you need to go to the cylinder option. And when you click on that, that comes to the forefront. And if you click on it again, you can see other options in here. So if I click on it and I scroll through, so you can create any of these basic shapes. And I'm going to click on this and create a sphere. When I click on the sphere, nothing appears in the workspace because you have to actually drag it out. So left mouse click and drag, and then you create that sphere. Once you create that, you need to go up here to edit to make sure that that is accepted. And now you can move around in the workspace. So to move around, to rotate around your object, you are going to use the left mouse key. So that just rotates. You can see that this little head is changing direction as I rotate. And to zoom in and out, it's Alt and left mouse, and then you let go of the Alt key. And I think you can also, there are other options to do this. This is just something that I'm used to. So Alt and left mouse, and then let go of the Alt key and move your left mouse key in and out. That's for zoom. You'll get used to this eventually. And for panning around, it's just the Alt and left mouse. So now that you can move around in the software, how do you sculpt? So if you see if I try to sculpt on this mesh, it gives me this error. To enable sculpting, please convert this to Poly Mesh 3D. So when you create anything within the software, you need to make sure that you can actually sculpt on it. And to do that, you just go to the right over here and click on Make Poly Mesh 3D. And now that allows you to sculpt on this mesh. And I'm just sculpting by using my left mouse key. And you can also, usually what you want to do is you want to turn on symmetry. That's very useful. So I can go to transform and activate symmetry. And that's going to make our sculpting symmetrical across the x-axis of the mesh. And you can change this by going to transform, activate symmetry, and just changing the axis. So you see now it's symmetrical across the y. And you can also have multiple axes have symmetry. So I'm going to leave it at X, and let's look at some other functions within the software. If you take a look at the right of your screen, you can see this box right here with a bunch of shapes in it. So these shapes, what they are is basically the first one, Cylinder 3D. This is where we started. So we clicked on Cylinder 3D and then used that to select another shape. So this is basically the starting shape that you have, the starting primitive, and then you have sphere 3D, which is basically the sphere that we started off with. So when we started off with the sphere and tried to sculpt on it, it asked us to make polymesh 3D. So that's where we started. And once we said, okay, we want to make this polymesh 3D, that is this one, PM3D. So if you see any shape that has a name PM3D, that means that it's a shape that started off as a primitive that you couldn't sculpt on, and then you made it into a primitive that you could sculpt on. So here we have PM3D, sphere 3D, and then this one, I'm actually not sure, I might have created this at some point, but it's basically one of those meshes that cannot be sculpted on. So this is the only one that we can sculpt on. So what these shapes are called, these different shapes up here, they are called tools. And you can see that they are in the tool section of your ZBrush menu. So if you look at the top, you see tool over here, and I can close this and open this up. So these are all your tools. And inside each of these, now for example, let's go to PM3D sphere since we can sculpt on this. So inside any of these shapes that you have here, you can create subtools. So you have a tool, which is the main project that you're working on. So you have and then you have subtools, which means that you can add different objects inside this tool. So here, if I click on the subtool menu, you'll see right now I just have this one sphere. What if I want to add in another mesh here that I want to sculpt on? So I can go to append, and what append does is it just adds a new primitive to this section. So you can either add a primitive from here, or you can add one of your other models that are up here. Right now we just have primitives since we haven't sculpted anything, so I'm going to add a cube. So when I add a cube, you can see that it appears over here, and you can move this by hitting your gizmo. So your gizmo is WER. It's all the same because it all brings up this gizmo that has basically all the functionality. So if I type in W and I move this up, you can see that we have two shapes, and we can move, rotate, and scale these just like we would in any other 3D software. None of them have symmetry enabled by default. So if you want it to be symmetrical, you just have to click on this one and go to transform and activate symmetry, and now you'll be able to sculpt on both of these symmetrically. So these are your subtools, and you'll notice that if I go up to the tool section, this object right here, this tool right here, PM3D sphere, has two primitives in it now, two models, and we can keep adding more. So we can either use append or insert. So if you use insert, that model appears on top of the subtool you've selected, and if you use append, that new model appears below the subtool you have selected. So a subtool is basically just a part of your model. So if you have a character that has a body and it has accessories like clothes and a belt, they would all be different subtools, but they would all be within that same tool. So now this tool has 4 subtools in it, and they're all named PM3D because we can sculpt on them. An interesting aspect of the ZBrush subtools is that they sort of work as very individual objects when it comes to undos and other changes that you make to them. So if you're on, let's move these around a bit. So I can select different subtools from the right over here, but I usually don't prefer that because it's easier to just select them from the workspace. So to select a subtool from the workspace, you just have to hit Alt and the left mouse key to select that particular subtool, and you can see that it changes color slightly when you select it. So I'm going to move this Alt left mouse, and I'm just going to move this somewhere else. So now I have these 4 subtools here, and let's start sculpting on one of them. So I'm going to sculpt on the subtool, and I'm just moving around sculpting, so you can see that I'm creating some sort of shape here, and then I'm going to sculpt on this subtool. So when you hit undo in ZBrush, undo is Control Z. Instead of undoing actions from everywhere in the workspace, it just undoes the action from the particular subtool we're on. So now I have performed multiple actions. I've sculpted on this subtool and I've sculpted on this one. And so I have a lot of undos that I have to work with here. But because they are valid, because the undos are valid for specific subtools, you can just Alt and left mouse click on this one. Let's say I don't like this cube anymore. I like what I've done here. I do not like this cube. I can just Alt left mouse click on the cube and just hit Control Z to undo the work that I've done on this cube. If I had the file open and I did maybe 100 other actions on other subtools and then came back to this cube, I would still be able to do that. So even if I go here and make some changes, let me use a different brush so you can see this a little better. So if I go up here, make some changes, these are all self-contained changes within a particular subtool. So I can make these changes and still go back to my sphere here and undo just on the sphere. And for each subtool, you can see the undos up here. So if I click on each one, you can see that bar is a little different. So I've performed more actions on the sphere. So I can see that I have a bigger bar and I have performed less actions or almost 0 actions on the torus. So I can just see maybe 2 bars here. So that's how the subtools work within the software. If you want to know what they are, which is useful, you might have like 15 to 20 or even 100 subtools in here, depending on what you're working on. So you might want to rename these. You can just go to the right, hit the rename and name it whatever you want. You can move them around using the left mouse key. So keep this section organized. You can also put them inside folders. So let's say all of these objects are one part of my file that I want to keep together. I can create a new folder and I can name this objects, and I can just drag all my objects within this folder. This is useful when you want to either hide all of them at once, or if you want to basically move all of them at once. So there's ways to move folders together. So that is useful. You notice that all of these objects are in a folder, but if I hide this folder, I can still see my torus. So that's just how ZBrush functions. So even if you hide an object, if you have it selected, so I was on the torus when I hit the folder, you can still see the object that you have selected, even if it shows up as hidden. So hidden is just basically you click on this eye, it hides it if the eye is active, if it's white or bright orange. You can see the object. If it is grayed out, the object is invisible. So you can see that whichever object I've selected is still visible even if it is hidden. And to change this, you just have to, there's no way to stop that from happening as far as I know. You can just create a new subtool if you want and have that subtool selected, and then these will be all hidden.